In this video, we'll just look at some of the differences between previous versions of Q-GIS version 2.x and the newer version 3. So for this example, we're using Q-GIS version 3.0.3, which just released a few weeks ago in summer of 2018. So in order to run heat map, rather than being up under vector tools now, that's been moved into the processing toolbox. And the heat map tool, also now stated as kernel density estimation, has moved into the interpolation tools in the processing toolbox. When we launch that with a double click, we get the heat map tools that are very similar to what we saw in previous versions of Q-GIS. So building on the same example from the Sierra Lab YouTube page previously, we have some trap distributions on a study site, and we want to know the concentration of the catch per unit effort of insects at these trap sites. So traps.cpue will remain the shapefile that we're interested in analyzing. We're going to set our radius at 1473.6 meters. That comes from the HOP calculation. That's still done outside of QGIS, so that hasn't changed. And the calculation of the standard distance still comes from the Saga toolbox, and that's still here. So it's mostly this heat map, the location of that that has changed. So the radius is going to be in map units. That's 1473.6 meters. Again, if we look down here, our coordinate system is in meters. So that's accurate. Our pixel size, though, is going to become 100 by 100 meters from the instructions of this laboratory design. Under advanced parameters, we're going to set the weight field as the CPUE. Remember, we want to do a weighted kernel density weighted by that catch per unit effort rather than just the concentration of individual traps. Remember, if you don't set a weight, you're just mapping the concentration of the trap location. We use the coordinate kernel by default, and we're not going to set a decay ratio. And for the output, raw or scaled, nominally, you'll still get a similar looking map. Okay. And then here we can save our heat map. Okay. So if we save to file, excuse me, if we save to file, this allows us to navigate somewhere on our hard drive, wherever we're working from. So here I'm going to create a folder for Lab 1 output. And then inside of this folder, I can save this as CPUE version 1. Okay. And then it's going to prompt me to open the output file after I run the algorithm. Okay. So now we can run this. Yeah, you can see it runs very quickly, and we get an output of the raster file. Here is our heat map, and then we can move on to do further processing. Please note also that this file that we've output here is going to be a GeoTIFF by default out of QGIS. Our next step is to clip this raster file or to extract it to the ranch boundary, which is here. And that process is still the same as it was previously. Under raster extraction, we'll clip raster by a mask. Our input layer will be the heat map file. Our mask layer will be the ranch boundary. And we can crop this file and I'm just going to run it. And if I turn off the heat map and I turn off the ranch boundary, now we have a raster file that is limited by the boundary of the ranch. So as a brief overview here, a couple of tools have been moved and a couple of tools remain in the same place. If we look under our processing toolbar, if we want to do point patterns to calculate the standard distance, that can be performed inside of the geostatistics under Saga, and those are still present, spatial point pattern analysis. This will allow you to calculate the standard distance for the HOP calculation. Then under the processing tools for interpolation, the heat map tool has moved. It used to be under the vector toolbar. Now it's under interpolation. And you can execute the kernel density estimation box here, toolbox. Make the settings that need to be made, output the file. And then the extract by mask still remains under the raster toolbar, and that will allow you to complete the kernel density estimation laboratory using QGIS version 3.0.3. Also notice that once you've used a tool, they appear here under recently used, so if this is a process that you need to repeat, you can quickly go to recently used here in the processing toolbar. Hopefully this allows you to quickly adapt previous instructions in the Sierra Lab YouTube videos from earlier versions of QGIS to the most recent version. And it's important to note that terms such as heat map, kernel density estimation, spatial point pattern, these terms remain the same. The only thing that's changed is where they're stored.